The chilling question hung in the air for years. How did so many young Germans willingly march towards death? The answer, disturbingly, wasn't solely ideology or blind obedience. It lay, in part, in a small white pill, Pervitin, a methamphetamine that transformed soldiers and teenagers into tireless, fearless, often remorseless machines. Thousands of young men, barely boys, in the Hitler Youth and the Waffen-SS, grew up not only steeped in Nazi indoctrination, but also subtly, insidiously, under the influence of this drug. It erased exhaustion, numbed empathy, and clouded judgment. The Third Reich, in its twisted pursuit of power, perfected dehumanization, not just through propaganda, but also, perhaps more alarmingly, through calculated chemistry. This was the story of a nation desperate for victory, drugging its youth to turn them into cannon fodder. The inhuman price paid for that fleeting, chemically induced invincibility was immense. This transformation wasn't purely ideological. It was crucially physically chemical. Behind closed doors, in silent laboratories, the regime's darker experiment began. The experiment was to turn these young men into perfect, unfeeling instruments of war. Methamphetamine, Pervitin, the Third Reich's hidden chemical weapon, became potent, readily available, and profoundly impactful. Fueled by Pervitin, they seemed unstoppable. An endless tide of gray uniforms and unwavering conviction. They crossed dense forests, stormed across open fields, conquered villages, all without sleep. Their eyes were wide, unblinking, focused solely on the objective. They shot without remorse. They obeyed without question. Beneath the infamous Nazi uniform, thousands marched as if their bodies weighed nothing, as if fear itself didn't exist. But it wasn't courage, not truly. Rigorous training contributed, but it was undeniably chemistry, a dangerous shortcut to a terrifying form of perceived strength. A relentless drug coursed through their young veins, systematically stripping away hunger, banishing sleep, and tragically eroding their humanity. To understand how a simple pill could shape an entire army, one must confront one of the Third Reich's darkest secrets. The disturbing truth lurked in the shadows. The Nazis strategically used methamphetamine, Pervitin, to manipulate their soldiers on an unprecedented scale. This drug played a pivotal, often overlooked role in the German military machine. This methamphetamine-based drug rapidly became a symbol of the era. It permeated the ranks, infiltrated the culture, profoundly affecting not only the soldiers who consumed it, but the course of World War II. The Nazi regime's decision wasn't born of malice alone. It stemmed from a chilling combination of strategic and logistical factors. A perceived necessity driven by the relentless demands of total war. Soldiers were instructed to take 3 to 5 pills a day, a seemingly small amount, with devastating cumulative effects. In anticipation of the Blitzkrieg invasion of France, a staggering 35 million doses were ordered, enough to supply 3 million German soldiers. Under its influence during the Blitzkrieg, they traveled astonishing distances, often under intense enemy fire. They cut vital telephone lines, sowing confusion and disarray, a critical blow swiftly delivered. The relentless pace of the war demanded everything from the soldiers, pushing them to their absolute limits. Pervitin's stimulating properties allowed them to march endlessly, virtually without tiring. This chemically induced superendurance masked the true cost. Chemically enhanced stamina was especially valuable during rapid advances. Resting gave the enemy a chance to regroup. The drug's ability to keep soldiers awake and alert for extended periods proved invaluable. It enabled soldiers to operate with ruthless efficiency during nighttime maneuvers, always ready to respond to any perceived threat, blurring the lines between reality and chemically induced paranoia. Beyond the physical, methamphetamine was widely believed to increase confidence and morale. The intense euphoria and surge of energy temporarily relieved the immense psychological stress of brutal combat, making soldiers feel invincible, more willing to fight, seemingly immune to the horrors around them. The perceived effects included a marked reduction of fear, a numbing of inhibitions, a potent combination strategically advantageous in the relentless theater of war. Soldiers numbed by the drug's effects were less likely to hesitate, less likely to question orders, even in the face of extreme danger. They were less likely to falter when ordered to carry out risky missions. Moreover, Pervitin helped soldiers cope, temporarily, with the overwhelming stress and trauma of war, providing a dangerous, illusory psychological escape. It temporarily suppressed debilitating anxiety, allowing them to focus intensely on their immediate tasks, shutting out the screams, the blood, the sheer inhumanity unfolding around them. Pervitin's ability to seemingly enhance performance meant fewer soldiers were needed to achieve objectives. This efficiency, however morally questionable, was crucial as Germany faced a growing shortage of personnel. The drug's appetite-suppressing effects also meant soldiers consumed fewer rations, subtly reducing the logistical burden of supplying vast armies. A grim calculation of efficiency over individual well-being. Instilling fear in the enemy, creating an image of unwavering, almost superhuman German soldiers, was also a factor in the decision to administer Pervitin. British newspapers were flooded with alarming reports about encounters with German paratroopers. Reports suggesting these soldiers were heavily drugged, seemingly fearless, even deranged. This starkly demonstrated the drug's potent effects, painting a terrifying picture of the enemy as something almost inhuman. Despite the initial perceived benefits, this chemically induced invincibility was far from perfect. The widespread use of Pervitin, as time would tragically reveal, was not without its deeply troubling consequences. The Nazi army, initially enthusiastic, did not completely suspend its use, but its usage gradually declined as the war progressed. This wasn't a sudden reversal, but a slow, creeping realization of the devastating negative side effects that were becoming increasingly apparent. One of the most significant drawbacks was severe physical exhaustion. Soldiers fueled by Pervitin pushed their bodies far beyond their natural limits, operating for days, even weeks, without adequate rest or proper nourishment. The drug masked the body's natural warning signals, leading to dangerous overexertion. The initial surge of energy inevitably gave way to a crippling crash, leaving soldiers depleted and vulnerable. A high price to pay for temporary superhuman performance. The suppression of hunger and fatigue, while seemingly advantageous in the short term, often meant soldiers neglected their basic needs, resulting in widespread malnutrition and severe sleep deprivation. Their bodies, deprived of essential nutrients and restorative sleep, began to break down, becoming more susceptible to illness and injury. The chemically induced stamina masked a slow, insidious deterioration of their physical well-beings. Furthermore, the effects of methamphetamine on the brain caused intense mood swings, unpredictable paranoia, and often terrifying hallucinations. Soldiers experienced heightened anxiety, a constant undercurrent of unease, and were prone to making impulsive, often reckless decisions. Decisions that could have devastating consequences on the battlefield. Clouded judgment, fueled by paranoia and distorted perceptions, undermined their effectiveness as soldiers. Many soldiers unknowingly developed a dangerous addiction to Pervitin, triggering a vicious cycle of dependence. The initial benefits were quickly overshadowed by the intense cravings and debilitating withdrawal symptoms that followed when the drug's effects wore off. They became trapped, reliant on the drug, simply to function, their bodies and minds desperately craving the chemical boost they had come to depend on. The insidious connection between methamphetamine and the Second World War tragically demonstrates how little was truly known about drug addiction at the time. The complexities of dependence, the long-term effects on the brain and body, were largely misunderstood. Soldiers, viewed as expendable assets in the war machine, were unwittingly subjected to a dangerous experiment, the potential consequences of which were woefully underestimated. Today, methamphetamine is rightly considered an addictive and harmful drug. Its use is strictly controlled, and many people who develop a dependence on it require intensive treatment to achieve sobriety. The insidious beginnings of methamphetamine use in Nazi Germany and the widespread distribution of Pervitin was undeniably toxic. It left a lingering chemical legacy, a dark stain on history that continues to affect us today. A dangerous precedent of chemical manipulation and the blurring of ethical boundaries. That poison, that shadow of the past, stubbornly refuses to disappear. It continues to haunt us. On one hand, the Nazis presented themselves as paragons of purity, champions of clean living, imposing a strict anti-drug policy bolstered by propaganda and enforced with draconian punishments. Yet, paradoxically, Pervitin, a particularly potent and insidious substance, became remarkably popular during Hitler's rule. This glaring hypocrisy underscored the regime's inherent contradictions. Pervitin thrived throughout the German Reich and later expanded its reach into occupied European countries. This small, unassuming pill, once hailed as a miracle cure, became readily available, openly sold in pharmacies across the nation. It wasn't until 1939, as war loomed, that its use was partially restricted, requiring a prescription. The pill wasn't fully regulated until the Reich Opium Law of 1941, a belated attempt to control a burgeoning problem that had already spiraled out of control. Its active ingredient, methamphetamine, is now illegal or strictly regulated almost everywhere in the world. But with over 100 million users and the numbers steadily rising, it's disturbingly considered our most popular poison. Produced in clandestine labs, often by amateur chemists, and typically adulterated with dangerous impurities, this substance is now commonly known as crystal meth, a far cry from the relatively pure Pervitin of the Nazi era. Generally ingested nasally and often taken in alarmingly high doses, the crystalline form of the so-called terror drug has reached unimaginable levels of popularity across Europe, with an exponential increase in first-time users, lured by its promise of euphoria and enhanced performance. The echoes of Pervitin's legacy reverberate through the present. This potent stimulant, with its dangerously powerful effects, is often used as a party drug to boost performance at work, even disturbingly in parliaments and universities. It eliminates the need for sleep, suppresses hunger, and promises a fleeting sense of euphoria. But, in the insidious form of crystal meth, it is a potentially destructive and highly addictive substance, a dark inheritance from a desperate past. Yet almost no one knows about its rise in Nazi Germany, its widespread use amongst soldiers, its calculated deployment as a weapon of war. To truly understand the historical relevance of methamphetamine and other substances for the Nazi state, we must go back further in time, to the years before the rise of the Third Reich, to explore the origins of the pharmaceutical industry that made Pervitin possible. The development of modern societies is as closely tied to the creation and widespread distribution of drugs, both legal and illegal, as the economy is inextricably linked to technological advances. a complex relationship of demand and supply, of innovation and exploitation, of societal needs and individual desires. In 1705, Johann Wolfgang von Goethe, the celebrated author, subtly explored through poetic means the thesis that man's very genesis is itself drug-induced, a profound statement about the human condition. I change my mind, therefore I am. A suggestion that our very perceptions of reality are constantly being altered and shaped by external influences. At the same time, in the less glamorous city of Paderborn, a humble pharmacy assistant, Friedrich Wilhelm Serturner, conducted groundbreaking experiments with the opium poppy, whose thick, bitter sap numbed pain more effectively than anything else then known to humankind. Serturner wanted to solve an age-old problem, a problem that has affected our species in a remarkably similar way throughout history. It was a concrete challenge for the brilliant 21-year-old chemist, a practical pursuit with profound implications. The active ingredient of the opium poppy, the crucial element that provided pain relief, is present in varying concentrations. Sometimes the bitter sap didn't relieve pain intensely enough. Other times, tragically, it caused involuntary overdose and fetal intoxication, a dangerous inconsistency that Serturner sought to eliminate. Driven by his inner demons, Serturner made a startling discovery, a breakthrough that would forever change the course of medicine. He managed to isolate morphine, the crucial alkaloid of opium, a kind of pharmacological metamorphosis that drove away pain instantly, offering relief with unparalleled precision. It not only marked a turning point in the history of pharmacology, the beginning of modern pain management, but also stands as one of the most important events of the early 19th century, if not in human history as a whole. Pain, that irritating, debilitating companion, could now be reliably relieved, even completely eliminated, through precisely measured doses, a monumental achievement with far-reaching consequences. Across Europe, apothecaries meticulously made pills from ingredients sourced from their own herb gardens or from the tireless labor of women who foraged for food and medicinal plants. A traditional localized system of medicine was about to undergo a dramatic transformation. These local chemists rapidly evolved into true factories within just a few years, establishing pharmaceutical standards, embracing mass production, and fundamentally changing the landscape of medicine. Morphine was no longer simply a method to relieve the common ailments of life. It was increasingly a great business opportunity, a source of immense profit and influence. In Darmstadt, the ambitious owner of E. Merck, Emanuel Merck, stood out as a true pioneer of this transformative development. In 1827, he established his business model for supplying alkaloids and other medicines of consistent, reliable quality, setting a new standard for the industry. This was the birth not only of the Merck Company, which still thrives today as a global pharmaceutical giant, but of the modern pharmaceutical industry as a whole, a turning point in the history of medicine and commerce. When injections were invented in the 1850s, there was simply no stopping morphine's victorious march, its rapid and widespread adoption across the world. The analgesic was extensively used in the American Civil War, 1861 to 1865, alleviating the suffering of countless wounded soldiers, and in the Franco-Prussian War, 1870 to 1871, further cementing its role as an indispensable tool in modern warfare. Soon, morphine doses became a standard procedure, a routine part of medical care on the battlefield. This seemingly simple change was crucial. The agonizing pain, even of severely wounded soldiers, could now be effectively controlled, a development that enabled a new, more brutal scale of warfare. Fighters who would have long been ruled out of combat due to their injuries soon recovered relatively quickly and were returned to the front lines, contributing to the relentless grind of attrition that characterized modern conflict. With morphine, also widely known as morphium, the development of pain relief and anesthesia reached a crucial peak both in the military and in civilian society, forever changing the way we deal with suffering from Europe through Asia to the distant shores of America. The supposed panacea conquered the entire world. Pharmacies throughout the United States began selling two particularly potent active ingredients without a prescription, a reflection of the lax regulatory environment of the time. Liquids containing morphine effectively calmed people, providing a sense of peace and tranquility, while beverages infused with cocaine, such as the original Vin Mariani, a Bordeaux wine with coca extract, and even the ubiquitous Coca-Cola, were widely used to combat low spirits, serving as both a hedonistic source of euphoria and a surprisingly effective local anesthetic. The stage was set for an explosion of pharmaceutical innovation. This was only the very beginning, the opening act of a much larger, more complex drama. The burgeoning pharmaceutical industry soon needed to diversify, to expand its product lines, to cater to an ever-growing market. It craved new products, innovative solutions to a wide range of ailments, both real and imagined. The race was on to discover the next blockbuster drug. On August 10, 1897, Felix Hoffmann, a talented chemist working at the Bayer Company, achieved a significant breakthrough. He successfully synthesized acetyl salicylic acid from willow bark, a natural remedy that had been used for centuries to alleviate pain and reduce fever. This newly synthesized compound was marketed as aspirin, and it rapidly conquered the world, becoming one of the most widely used and recognized medications in history, a testament to the power of pharmaceutical innovation. Just 11 days later, remarkably, the very same man, Felix Hoffmann, invented another substance that would also become world famous, although for far more controversial reasons: diacetylmorphine, a derivative of morphine, a refined and potent version of the already powerful painkiller. This was, in essence, the first designer drug, meticulously crafted to enhance the effects of its predecessor, and it was proudly labeled as heroin, a name that would eventually become synonymous with addiction and despair. It entered the market with a confident flourish and launched its own aggressive marketing campaign. Heroin is good business, their executives proudly declared, advertising the substance as a remedy for a wide range of ailments, from headaches and general malaise to, shockingly, as a cough syrup specifically for children. A disturbing example of the ethical lapses that plagued the early pharmaceutical industry. The business thrived not only for Bayer, but also for countless other companies that quickly entered the lucrative market. In the last third of the 19th century, several new pharmaceutical hubs developed along the Rhine River, transforming the region into a vibrant center of chemical innovation and production. Unlike other more traditional industries, the chemical industry didn't require as much overhead to get started. It needed relatively little specialized equipment and raw materials, making it accessible to a wider range of entrepreneurs and investors. Even small operations promised incredibly high profit margins, fueling rapid growth and intense competition. What mattered most, more than capital investment or complex machinery, was the developer's intuition, their innate ability to identify and solve chemical problems, and their specialized knowledge, their deep understanding of the intricate processes involved in creating new compounds. And Germany, rich in human capital, could rely on an inexhaustible pool of exceptionally talented chemists and engineers, meticulously trained in what was then the best educational system in the world, a distinct competitive advantage The network of universities and technical schools in Germany was widely recognized as exemplary, a model for other nations to emulate. Science and business worked hand in hand. Research and development progressed at full speed, and numerous patents were issued, protecting innovative discoveries and fueling further investment. In the chemical industry, Germany quickly became the undisputed workshop of the world. The phrase "made in Germany" became a guarantee of quality, a symbol of reliability and innovation, especially for medicines, a reputation that propelled German pharmaceutical companies to global dominance. And this did not significantly change, even after the devastating consequences of the First World War. While France and Britain could readily acquire natural stimulants such as coffee, tea, vanilla, pepper, and other natural medicines from their vast overseas colonies, Germany, having lost its colonial possessions under the Treaty of Versailles, was forced to look for other means to develop alternative strategies to fuel its economy and maintain its competitive edge. Stimulants had to be produced synthetically, created in laboratories through complex chemical processes, a necessity that drove innovation and shaped the future of the German pharmaceutical industry. Indeed, Germany urgently needed artificial help, synthetic solutions to the numerous challenges it faced in the aftermath of the war. The conflict had inflicted deep wounds on the nation, causing both physical and psychological pain, leaving its citizens weary and demoralized. In the turbulent 1920s, medicines gained increasing importance for the battered population between the Baltic Sea and the Alps, offering solace, comfort, and a temporary escape from the harsh realities of everyday life. The widespread desire for sedation, for relief from anxiety and despair, spurred self-education and experimentation, and soon, a vast amount of technical knowledge emerged for the production of various remedies, both legal and illicit. The path was firmly set for a prosperous pharmaceutical industry, an industry that would play a crucial role in Germany's economic recovery. Many of the chemical substances we know today, the medications we take for granted, were developed and patented in a remarkably short period of time, a testament to the ingenuity and drive of German scientists and entrepreneurs. German companies quickly became leaders in the global market, dominating the production and distribution of pharmaceuticals. They not only produced the greatest quantity of medications, but also supplied most of the essential chemical raw materials for drug manufacturing worldwide, effectively controlling the supply chain and solidifying their position of dominance. A new economy emerged, fueled by chemical innovation and pharmaceutical production. And the picturesque Rhine Valley, with its numerous factories and research institutions, became a kind of chemical valley, a hub of scientific and industrial activity. Small, previously unknown companies thrived almost overnight, becoming influential players in the global market. Their success stories contributed to Germany's resurgence. In 1925, a pivotal moment occurred. The largest chemical factories in Germany united to form IG Farben, one of the most powerful and influential companies in the world, headquartered in Frankfurt. Its vast reach extended across numerous industries, and its political influence was immense, a symbol of Germany's industrial might. Opiates, in particular, remained a German specialty, a reflection of the nation's long history of expertise in pharmaceutical innovation. In 1926, the country led the world in morphine production and was the undisputed world leader in heroin exports, a grim distinction that underscored the ethical complexities of the pharmaceutical industry. A staggering 98% of its production was exported, supplying the global demand for these powerful painkillers. Between 1925 and 1930, an astonishing 91 tons of morphine were produced in Germany, accounting for roughly 40% of global production, a clear indication of the nation's dominance in the opiate market. Under the obligations of the Treaty of Versailles, Germany reluctantly signed the League of Nations International Opium Convention in 1925, which aimed to regulate the international trade in narcotics. However, it wasn't ratified in Berlin until 1929, a clear indication of the government's ambivalence towards international regulations. The local alkaloid industry still processed just over 200 tons of opium in 1928, highlighting the scale of the German drug trade. Germans were also world leaders in another class of substances, the potent stimulants that would later fuel the war machine. The companies Merck, Boehringer, and Knoll collectively controlled a remarkable 80% of the global cocaine market, a testament to their technological prowess and marketing expertise. Merck's cocaine, produced in the city of Darmstadt, was widely seen as the best product in the world, the gold standard of purity and quality, and commercial pirates in China even printed millions of fake Merck labels, attempting to capitalize on the company's stellar reputation. Hamburg was the main European market for raw cocaine, a crucial hub for the global drug trade. Each year, thousands of kilograms of raw cocaine were legally imported through its bustling port, destined for further processing in German laboratories. Peru, a major source of cocaine, sold its entire annual production of raw cocaine, over 5 tons, almost exclusively to Germany, for refinement and distribution across the world. The influential F.A. Gruppe Opium und Kokain, expert group on opium and cocaine, a powerful lobbying organization created by German drug manufacturers, worked tirelessly to closely integrate government and the chemical industry, ensuring that their interests were protected and promoted. A clear example of the close relationship between industry and government in Weimar Germany. Two powerful cartels, each made up of a handful of dominant companies, effectively divided the lucrative global market. The so-called Cocaine Convention and the Opiate Convention dictated prices, controlled supply, and maximized profits. Merck was the leading business entity in both cases, wielding immense power and influence. The young Weimar Republic, despite its progressive ideals, was flooded with psychoactive and consciousness-altering substances, a reflection of the era's experimentation and hedonism. It transported heroin and cocaine to all corners of the world, effectively becoming a global trafficker in both legal and illicit drugs, a dark underbelly to its economic success. This scientific and economic development also resonated deeply with the spirit of the age. Artificial paradises were increasingly in fashion in the Weimar Republic, offering a temporary escape from the anxieties and uncertainties of the era. People often preferred to flee into imaginary worlds, fueled by drugs and other distractions, instead of facing the often less optimistic reality. A phenomenon that largely defined this first democracy on German soil, both politically and culturally. Many resisted acknowledging the true underlying reasons for the crushing military defeat in the First World War, actively suppressing the shared responsibility of the German imperial establishment for the utter fiasco of the conflict. Clinging to narratives of victimhood and external blame, the malicious legend of the stab in the back became dangerously popular, falsely claiming that the German army had only lost the war due to internal sabotage by the left, a convenient scapegoat that absolved the military and the ruling elite of any responsibility. These escapist tendencies were often expressed in pure, unadulterated hatred, a venomous resentment directed towards minority groups and perceived enemies, or conversely in cultural excess, a frantic pursuit of pleasure and novelty to distract from the underlying anxieties of the era. Especially in the vibrant, yet increasingly chaotic city of Berlin. Alfred Doblin's seminal novel, Berlin Alexanderplatz, vividly described the city as a Babylon, a fragmented and frenetic landscape of excess with an incomparably sordid underworld, a place desperately seeking salvation in the most atrocious and unimaginable excesses, particularly drugs, a vivid depiction of the city's descent into hedonism and despair. Berlin nightlife. Oh my, the world had never seen anything quite like it. A dizzying kaleidoscope of vice and artistic expression. We used to have a great army. Now we have great perversions, lamented the author Klaus Mann, capturing the sentiment of moral decline that pervaded certain segments of society. The city on the banks of the Spree became synonymous with moral condemnation, a symbol of decadence and excess in the eyes of many. When the German currency collapsed, plunging the nation into hyperinflation, all moral values seemed to collapse right along with it. Everything disintegrated in a toxicological frenzy, a desperate attempt to find meaning and pleasure in a world that seemed to be falling apart. The pursuit of artificial highs became a widespread form of escapism. The very icon of the era, the actress and dancer Anita Berber, a notorious figure known for her outrageous behavior, dipped white rose petals in a cocktail of chloroform and ether for breakfast before sucking them clean. A shocking example of the era's embrace of dangerous and self-destructive habits. Films about the allure and dangers of cocaine or morphine were regularly shown in cinemas, and all manner of drugs were readily available at street corners, often without a prescription. A blatant disregard for public health and safety. It was rumored that a staggering 40% of Berlin's doctors were themselves addicted to morphine, a clear indication of the widespread nature of the problem and the devastating impact it had on even those tasked with providing medical care. In Friedrichstrasse, Chinese merchants from the former German leased territory of Qingdao ran secretive opium dens, catering to a specific clientele, seeking solace in the intoxicating smoke. Illegal nightclubs opened in the back rooms of the Mitte district, operating outside the law and catering to a clientele seeking forbidden pleasures. Smugglers distributed leaflets at the Bahnhof Zoo station, advertising illegal dance parties and beauty nights. A constant stream of invitations to indulge in the city's thriving underworld. Large, extravagant clubs, like the famous Haus Vaterland at Potsdamer Platz, a massive entertainment complex offering a range of themed experiences, and the Ballhaus Resi, notorious for its extravagant promiscuity on Blumenstrasse, attracted huge crowds of pleasure seekers, as did smaller, more intimate venues like the Kakadu Bar or the Zoom Schwarzenbohren, where masks were handed out at the entrance to ensure customer anonymity, a reflection of the secretive and often illicit nature of the nightlife scene. An early nascent form of sex and drug tourism began arriving from neighboring Western countries and the United States, drawn by the allure of Berlin's cheap thrills and unbridled freedoms. Because everything in Berlin was as cheap as it was thrilling, the Second World War had been lost, and everything seemed permitted. A sense of liberation and lawlessness pervaded the city. The metropolis transformed into Europe's experimental capital, a hub of artistic and cultural innovation, but also a breeding ground for vice and decadence. Posters on the walls of houses warned in shrill expressionist script, "Berlin, breathe. Remember that your dance partner is death," a stark reminder of the dangers lurking beneath the city's glittering facade. In 1928, a staggering 73 kilograms of morphine and heroin were legally sold by prescription in Berlin alone, a testament to the widespread dependence on these powerful drugs. Anyone who could afford it used cocaine, the ultimate weapon to intensify the moment, to prolong the party, to escape the mundane realities of everyday life. Cocaine spread like wildfire, becoming a potent symbol of the era's extravagance and excess. On the other hand, it was also considered a degenerate poison by many, a symbol of moral decay, and was disapproved of by both communists and Nazis, who were increasingly battling for power in the streets. A violent backlash against the carefree zeitgeist was steadily brewing. German nationalists ranted against moral decay, decrying the perceived erosion of traditional values, and similar attacks came from conservative elements within society. While Berlin's newfound status as a cultural metropolis was proudly embraced by some, the bourgeoisie, feeling increasingly displaced and marginalized in the 1920s, showed its insecurity through its radical condemnation of the mass pleasure culture, denouncing it as decadent Western thinking, a threat to German identity. Worst of all, the National Socialists vehemently opposed the Weimar period's pharmacological quest for salvation. Their blatant rejection of the parliamentary system, democracy, and the urban culture of a society opening to the world was expressed through bombastic slogans aimed at the degenerate state of the hated Jewish Republic, a dangerous rhetoric that resonated with a growing segment of the population. The Nazis had their own prescription to cure the people. They promised ideological salvation, a return to traditional values, and a renewed sense of national pride. For them, only one legitimate form of intoxication existed: the intoxicating power of the swastika, the symbol of their twisted ideology. National Socialism also aspired to a transcendental state, a state of collective euphoria and unwavering devotion to the Führer. The Nazi world of illusions, intended to lure Germans, often used manipulative techniques of intoxication, creating a sense of belonging and purpose while simultaneously suppressing critical thought. According to Hitler's incendiary text, Mein Kampf, world-changing historical decisions had to be made in states of euphoric enthusiasm or hysteria, a dangerous belief that justified irrational behavior and disregard for rational planning. Thus, the Nazi Party distinguished itself, on one hand, with populist arguments, appealing to the masses with promises of economic security and national renewal, and on the other, with torch-like parades, flag consecrations, enthusiastic proclamations, and public speeches designed to induce a state of collective ecstasy, overwhelming the individual with the power of the group. These carefully orchestrated events were complemented by the violent frenzies of the brown shirts, Sturmabteilung or Siege, during the early Kampfzeit, period of struggle, often fueled by alcohol abuse, creating an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. Realpolitik, pragmatic compromise, and rational debate tended to be dismissed as an unheroic cattle trade, a sign of weakness and indecision. The idea was to replace politics with a state of social intoxication, a shared delusion that united the masses under a single unquestioning banner. If the Weimar Republic can be seen, in psycho-historical terms, as a repressed society grappling with the trauma of war and the uncertainties of democracy, its supposed antagonists, the National Socialists, were paradoxically at the forefront of that very trend, offering a different, equally dangerous form of escapism. They hated drugs in the traditional sense because they wanted to be the drug themselves, the ultimate source of euphoria, belonging, and unwavering obedience. A twisted attempt to monopolize the means of escape and control. Otto Friedrich Ranke, the introducer of methamphetamine into the German army. The rise of Pervitin within the Wehrmacht is inseparably linked to this high-ranking physician. A man with an ascetic appearance, a narrow face, and piercing dark brown eyes, whose intensity is disturbingly noticeable in the few surviving photographs of him. Professor and Dr. Otto Friedrich Ranke was a complex figure, a man driven by ambition, scientific curiosity, and a deep-seated desire to serve his country. Otto Friedrich Ranke was 38 years old when he was appointed director of the Institute for Defense Physiology Research, a seemingly obscure position that would ultimately have a profound impact on the course of the war. A key appointment. Although no one at the time could have fully imagined the implications back then, physiology was a relatively marginal discipline in medicine, often overshadowed by more specialized fields. A holistic approach to understanding the organism, studying the intricate interactions between the physical and biochemical processes of cells, tissues, and organs. Defense physiology, in turn, addressed the specific strains placed on soldiers, the unique physical and psychological challenges they faced in the demanding environment of warfare, with the ultimate goal of enhancing their performance under extreme conditions and stressful circumstances. A pragmatic application of scientific principles to improve the effectiveness of the military. The Army had begun to see itself as a modern, scientifically driven organization, and soldiers were increasingly described as animated machines, efficient cogs in a larger system. Ranke's primary task was to protect them from wear and tear, from breakdown and incapacitation, ensuring that they could continue to function effectively for as long as possible. His role was essentially to grease the gears of the machinery, functioning as a kind of performance coach for the German army, optimizing their physical and mental capabilities. In addition to being a physician and researcher, Ranke was also an inventor of practical devices. Over the years, he developed a sighting device to detect artificial fog, new dust-proof goggles specifically designed for motorcyclists, providing enhanced visibility and protection, bulletproof and breathable tropical helmets tailored for the Africa Corps, offering crucial protection from the harsh desert environment, and directional microphones to help counterintelligence units listen in on their targets, a testament to his innovative thinking and commitment to serving the needs of the military. Ranke's Institute for Defense Physiology Research was a section of the Military Medical Academy on Invalidenstrasse in Berlin, a large, imposing 18th-century neo-Baroque building steeped in history and tradition. It now houses the Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, a symbolic shift in focus from military to economic power. From 1934 to 1945, this was where the Army trained its most promising medical officers, preparing them for the challenges of modern warfare. This prestigious Prussian elite institution, known as the Militärärztliche Akademie, Military Medical Academy, had the largest medical and scientific library in Europe, a treasure trove of knowledge and research, and a fully equipped two-story laboratory with the latest cutting-edge technology, providing the resources necessary for groundbreaking research and experimentation. It also boasted several large auditoriums, reading rooms, and an honor hall adorned with busts of Virchow, Helmholtz, von Behring, and other esteemed doctors and researchers, all said to have rendered immortal service to science, inspiring future generations of medical professionals. The complex also included state-of-the-art gyms and swimming pools, promoting physical fitness and well-being, as well as a 5-story residential block with comfortable double rooms for the 800 aspiring medical officers. These were known as pépinières, a complex Berlin pun on the word pep, derived from Pépinière, the former training institute for military doctors under the Prussian kings, from which the finest medical scientists of the 19th century had emerged. A nod to tradition and a playful acknowledgement of the importance of energy and vitality. Following in their predecessors' footsteps, the master students proudly wore the Reichsadler, Reich Eagle, and the swastika on their elegant uniforms, a stark symbol of their allegiance to the Nazi regime. There was also a riding hall with 90 horses, several racetracks, stables for sick horses, veterinarians, and a forge, reflecting the importance of cavalry and animal husbandry in the military at the time. The scientific departments were located in the large block at the back of the inner courtyard, a hive of activity where groundbreaking research was conducted. The Army Institute of Pharmacology and Toxicology, the Serum Preservation Laboratory, and the Aeromedical Research Institute, headed by Professor Hubertus Strughold, as well as the Institute for Defense Physiology Research, led by Otto Ranke, which in 1938 consisted of only one assistant physician, 3 resident doctors, and a few civilian administrative staff, a small but ambitious team. But the ambitious Ranke wanted to rapidly expand his department to increase its resources and influence. He planned to do so through something he passionately promoted for the Wehrmacht, a small molecule, seemingly innocuous, about to embark on a great and ultimately tragic career. Ranke, the chief defense physiologist of the Third Reich, had one primary enemy, one persistent foe that he was determined to defeat. It wasn't the Russians in the East, nor the French or British in the West. The adversary he was determined to conquer was fatigue, a strange, hard-to-grasp antagonist that regularly knocked fighters unconscious, left them sprawled on the ground, and forced them to rest, undermining their effectiveness on the battlefield. A sleeping soldier is a useless soldier, unable to act, incapable of defending himself or his comrades. Fatigue impairs coordination, leads to random firing, increasing the risk of friendly fire incidents, and causes a loss of control over motorcycles, cars, or tanks, resulting in accidents and inefficiencies. In Ranke's own words, relaxing on the day of battle can decisively alter the outcome. Often in combat, perseverance in that last quarter hour is absolutely essential. The ability to push through exhaustion and maintain focus can be the difference between victory and defeat. Ranke declared that the fight against exhaustion was his top priority, a mission he pursued with unwavering zeal. In the spring of 1938, a year and a half before the outbreak of the war, he read a glowing hymn of praise to Pervitin written by Temmler, a chemist at the Temmler-Verka clinic, and became immediately alert. One particular statement captivated him. Supposedly, this substance helps subjects achieve a 20% increase in lung capacity and absorb greater amounts of oxygen, standard metrics at the time for assessing higher performance. An irresistible prospect for a man dedicated to optimizing soldiers' physical capabilities. He immediately decided to explore the topic thoroughly, conducting his own experiments, testing an increasing number of doctors, 90 at first, then 150, expanding his research to gather more comprehensive data. He organized blind, voluntary trials, administering Pervitin, caffeine, or placebo pills to the participants, meticulously controlling the variables to ensure the validity of his findings. The test subjects had to solve challenging math and logic problems all night long until 4 o'clock the following afternoon, a grueling test of endurance and mental acuity. The results seemed unequivocal, overwhelmingly positive. By dawn, the men who'd been given placebos or caffeine had their heads slumped on their desks, completely exhausted and unable to continue. While the Pervitin group was still working frantically, their faces seemingly fresh and alert, both physically and mentally sharp. As the experimental record stated, even after more than 10 hours of constant concentration, they still felt like they wanted to have fun. An unsettling observation that hinted at the potential for reckless behavior. But after carefully evaluating the test sheets, not all of Ranke's findings were entirely positive. a nuanced understanding of the drug's effects began to emerge. Tasks requiring higher cerebellar abstraction, complex problem-solving, and critical thinking were not performed particularly well by Pervitin users. The calculations may have been completed faster, but they contained more errors, suggesting a trade-off between speed and accuracy. There was also no significant increase in concentrations and attention during more complex questions, and only a very small increase during lower-level tasks. Pervitin prevented people from sleeping, but it didn't necessarily make them smarter. A crucial distinction that Ranke surprisingly seemed to overlook. Ranke concluded, without a trace of cynicism, that this made it ideal for soldiers, particularly those engaged in repetitive tasks requiring stamina and alertness, based on the results collected from what was likely the first systematic drug experiment in military history. A disturbing precedent for future pharmacological interventions. Dr. Otto Ranke stated in a report, "An excellent substance to awaken a tired squad," highlighting the drug's potential to enhance soldiers' performance. We can understand the momentous military importance it would have if we succeeded in eliminating natural fatigue through medical means. A militarily valuable substance. A clear endorsement of Pervitin's potential as a weapon of war. Inspired by these results, Ranke boldly suggested conducting a broader series of tests in regular military units to assess the drug's effectiveness in real-world combat scenarios. To his surprise, the request initially fell on deaf ears. Bureaucratic inertia and skepticism hampered his efforts to promote the drug's widespread adoption. In the Bendler Block Office Complex, the headquarters of the Army General Staff, the possibilities and potential dangers of the drug were largely ignored. Military leaders seemed hesitant to embrace such a radical departure from traditional methods. While the ambitious scientist Ranke was already imagining the soldier of the future, whose equipment would also include synthetic alkaloids that targeted the brain center in a way not yet fully understood, his superiors, military bureaucrats from the Medical Inspection Unit, had not yet reached this level of sophistication. They were still primarily debating whether to give the troops wholemeal or white bread, a seemingly trivial concern compared to the potential of Pervitin. While Ranke had long moved on to brain food, recognizing the crucial role of mental acuity and stamina in modern warfare, he had, in a way, predicted what the Berlin physician and author Gottfried Benn, trained during the Kaiser era at the predecessor of the Military Medical Academy, would eloquently write a few years later. Powerful brains are not strengthened with milk, but with alkaloids. Gottfried Benn's words were a powerful argument for pushing the boundaries of human potential, even through artificial means. Benn wrote this in his essay, Provocationen, a philosophical exploration of the nature of creativity and innovation. The provocations are the changes in neural flows, new thoughts, fresh ideas provoked by unconventional foods for the brain, a testament to the power of chemical manipulation to unlock hidden potential. Knowledge of Pervitin and its surprising effects quickly spread among young doctors, particularly those under great pressure in their difficult medical studies, facing long hours and intense competition. They soon expected real miracles from the supposedly performance-enhancing substance and began consuming more and more of it, blurring the lines between medical necessity and reckless self-experimentation. This made them precursors to today's university students around the world, among whom the use of performance-enhancing pills, like Ritalin and amphetamine derivatives, is widespread, a disturbing echo of the past in the present. Only when Ranke discovered this troubling trend, which he had partially triggered with his own tests, and learned that a ward had to be opened at the University of Munich specifically for the so-called Pervitin corpses, did he fully realize the potential danger. A stark wake-up call that highlighted the risks of the uncontrolled drug use. He was forced to acknowledge that high-dose consumption was already common during the pre-exam phase at his own military medical academy, the very institution tasked with training the future leaders of military medicine. A worrying sign that the drug was being misused. The results of those under the influence left much to be desired, and a concerned colleague wrote, "In cases where pharmacological assistance was admitted, the exam results were extraordinarily poor, highlighting the detrimental effects of Pervitin on cognitive function when taken in excessive amounts." It was not a miracle cure for academic struggles. Ronke hastily canceled another Pervitin experiment planned for 1939 and sent a stern letter to the other institute directors of the academy, warning them of the potential dangers of addiction and urging them to completely ban Pervitin within the academy. A belated attempt to control the spread of the drug and mitigate the risks. But Ronke could not rid himself of the ghosts he had summoned. The genie was already out of the bottle. Methamphetamine continued to spread like wildfire, fueled by word of mouth and the perceived benefits of enhanced performance, and would pass through every barracks door in the following weeks and months, infiltrating every level of the military. The last days of peace went by, marked by a growing sense of unease and impending doom. Medical officers were preparing for their imminent deployment to Poland and bought everything they could from the pharmacy. Since Pervitin was not yet officially supplied by the Wehrmacht, or at least not yet openly endorsed, Ronke could only watch, with a growing sense of unease, as the situation spiraled out of control. Less than a week before the war began, he wrote to a military chief surgeon of the High Command expressing his concerns. Of course, it is a double-edged sword to give the troops a different kind of medicine that cannot be limited to emergencies, acknowledging the potential for abuse and the difficulty of controlling its use. His warnings, however, came far too late. The stage was set for a large-scale, uncontrolled experiment. An uncontrolled large-scale trial began, without clear instructions on the correct dosage of the stimulant and with enormous quantities readily available. The Wehrmacht launched its attack on its unsuspecting eastern neighbor, unleashing the full power of its chemically enhanced army. The use of methamphetamine during the beginning of the Second World War. Medical Service reports on methamphetamine used during the attack on Poland, which began on September 1, 1939, and triggered the Second World War, fill entire files at the military archive in Freiburg. A jumble of confusing and often contradictory descriptions reflecting the chaotic nature of the drug's deployment. The records are not intended to be complete or representative, but they were all that Ronke, who had been appointed Defense Physiology Advisor to the Army Medical Inspection Service at the start of the war, had to work with, attempting to make sense of the scattered data and assess the overall impact of the drug. There was no planned investigation, as the substance had not been distributed systematically, but rather randomly, according to the whim of the commander, the medical officer, or even the individual soldier. A haphazard approach that made it difficult to draw meaningful conclusions. When crossing the Great Vistula River in Poland, the 3rd Panzer Division veered sharply in Grudziądz toward East Prussia, and from there advanced toward Brest-Litovsk, reporting the following observations. Euphoria is often experienced, increased attention span, clear performance enhancement, work is done effortlessly, a pronounced alertness effect, and a feeling of freshness, painting a positive, albeit somewhat superficial, picture of the drug's effects. We worked all day. Depression disappeared, and our spirits returned. The drug seemed to lift the soldier's mood and alleviate the psychological stress of combat. War was seen as a task to be carried out, and the drug seemed to help tank units avoid thinking too much about what they were doing in this foreign country. allowing them instead to focus solely on their objective, even if that meant killing. A numbing effect that facilitated violence, all fresh and lively, excellent discipline, slight euphoria, and greater thirst for action. The drug seemed to instill a sense of enthusiasm and obedience, making the soldiers more willing to follow orders, without question. Mental spirits high, very stimulated, no accidents, lasting effect. The positive reports continued to pour in, seemingly validating the drug's effectiveness. After taking 4 pills, double vision and colors, even mild hallucinations clearly perceived as pleasant, delighted the men, who would soon be intoxicated by victory. A disturbing glimpse into the altered state of consciousness induced by the drug. The feeling of hunger decreases. A particularly beneficial aspect is the emergence of a strong drive to work. The effect is so clear that it cannot be attributed to imagination, highlighting the drug's appetite-suppressing effects and its ability to enhance motivation. A high-ranking lieutenant recounted his own positive experience with the substance. No side effects, no headache, no ringing in the ears, with full intellectual alertness for 3 days and nights in a cordial atmosphere. Seemingly immune to the drug's potential drawbacks, he negotiated with the Russians in Brest, dividing up the country. A chilling example of how methamphetamine could be used to enhance diplomatic negotiations. When he encountered Polish defenders on the way back, methamphetamine made him particularly alert, enabling him to react quickly and decisively in a dangerous situation. For many soldiers, the drug seemed to be the ideal companion on the battlefield, a chemical crutch that provided a temporary boost in performance. It deactivated inhibitions, which facilitated combat. Whether in night marches, before which all drivers and leaders consumed energy at midnight to sharpen their attention, pulling out stuck tanks, shooting, or carrying out other automated maneuvers, the drug seemed to enhance every aspect of the attack, which ultimately resulted in the deaths of 100,000 Polish soldiers, and by the end of the year, 60,000 Polish civilians, a tragic human cost that was often overlooked in the pursuit of military victory. The drug helped the aggressors work without any sign of fatigue until the mission's end, providing that extra dose of energy that made everything easier, a convenient solution for overcoming physical and mental limitations. A medical officer from the 9th Army Corps was effusive in his praise. "I am convinced that in major offensives, where every last drop of strength must be squeezed out, a unit equipped with Pervitin is superior," a clear endorsement of the drug's potential to enhance combat effectiveness. Therefore, this doctor ensured there was a supply of Pervitin in the unit's medical kit, making it readily available to soldiers in need. An increase in performance is quite evident among tank drivers and weapons operators in the prolonged battles from September 1st to 4th, 1939. And the Reconnaissance Division, which has used this substance with great success on long and difficult night marches, as well as to maintain and boost attention during reconnaissance patrol operations. Further evidence of the drug's widespread use and perceived benefits. Another report stated, "We must especially highlight the excellent effect on work capacity and morale among the severely burdened officers at division headquarters, all of whom acknowledged the subjective and objective increase in performance with Pervitin, highlighting the drug's ability to alleviate stress and enhance productivity among high-ranking officers." This heightened attention was not limited to tank drivers. A high-ranking military doctor wrote, "Men were expected to make enormous efforts in intense heat, extremely dusty conditions, and on poor roads during long trips that lasted from early morning to late at night, from Silesia through Bohemia, Moravia, and Slovakia, almost to Lviv in Poland. illustrating the demanding conditions faced by the soldiers. The pills were distributed without stating their purpose, but their striking effect soon made it clear to the crews what they were supposed to do. A subtle form of manipulation that allowed the soldiers to experience the drug's effects without being explicitly informed of its dangers. If Pervitin was not available, the soldiers in question were believed to face a greater threat. A senior staff physician reported with regret, among the drivers, many accidents, mostly attributable to excessive fatigue, could have been avoided if an analeptic like Pervitin had been administered, framing the drug as a necessary tool for preventing traffic accidents. A distorted perspective that prioritized military efficiency over individual well-being. Seriously, there were also critical voices, dissenting opinions that challenged the widespread use of the drug. The army physician of the 6th Army, who would later perish at Stalingrad, collected several reports from subordinate medical officers and wrote to Ranka. These contradictory reports make it abundantly clear that Pervitin isn't a harmless drug. It doesn't seem at all appropriate for it to be distributed randomly among the troops. A voice of reason amidst the growing enthusiasm for the drug. So some people clearly had reservations about the use of this stimulant, acknowledging the potential for negative side effects and the dangers of uncontrolled distribution. Nevertheless, curiosity had been sparked. The final sentence of the 4th Army Corps report reads, "To continue the experiments, a larger quantity of Pervitin tablets is required," highlighting the growing interest in the drug and the desire to further explore its potential applications. The legacy of Pervitin, a complex mix of innovation and ethical compromise, continues to resonate. The initial euphoria surrounding Pervitin's use in the early stages of the war gradually gave way to a more nuanced understanding of its effects, and its drawbacks became increasingly apparent. While the drug initially seemed to enhance performance and suppress fatigue, its long-term consequences proved devastating. The reports from the front lines began to reflect this shift in perspective. The initial glowing accounts of heightened alertness and increased efficiency were gradually overshadowed by descriptions of severe physical and mental side effects. Soldiers, initially lauded for their seemingly tireless energy, were now exhibiting signs of extreme exhaustion, malnutrition, and profound psychological distress. Sleep deprivation became rampant, leading to impaired judgment and increased accident rates. The initial boost in morale and confidence gave way to intense mood swings, paranoia, and hallucinations. Soldiers, once seemingly fearless, now experienced crippling anxiety and a heightened sense of unease, even in the absence of immediate danger. The reports detailed instances of erratic behavior, impulsive decisions, and a general decline in combat effectiveness. The drug, intended to enhance performance, was now hindering it. The initial perception of Pervitin as a miracle cure had crumbled, revealing the dark reality of its addictive nature and its potential to cause irreversible harm. The anecdotal evidence from soldiers themselves was supplemented by the growing body of scientific research, which confirmed the drug's deleterious effects on the central nervous system. Studies began to appear highlighting the long-term health risks associated with chronic methamphetamine use, including cardiovascular problems, neurological damage, and severe psychological disorders. The initial enthusiasm for Pervitin within the German military began to wane as the devastating consequences became impossible to ignore. The reports from the front lines, once filled with praise for the drug's efficacy, were now increasingly cautionary in tone. The military leadership, initially supportive of Pervitin's use, was now forced to confront the grim reality of its unintended side effects. The logistical challenges associated with supplying and controlling the drug's distribution also became increasingly problematic. The initial optimism surrounding Pervitin's ability to reduce the need for rest and supplies proved to be short-sighted. The drug's appetite-suppressing effects led to widespread malnutrition, weakening the soldiers and increasing their susceptibility to disease and injury. The chaos and unpredictability associated with the drug's use on the battlefield added another layer of complexity. Soldiers experiencing intense highs, followed by devastating lows, became unpredictable and unreliable. The drug's influence on their decision-making abilities compromised unit cohesion and overall combat effectiveness. The military leadership's response to these emerging challenges was mixed. Some advocated for a complete ban on Pervitin, while others clung to the belief that the drug's benefits outweighed its risks, particularly in critical situations where stamina and alertness were paramount. This internal debate within the German military reflected the broader societal anxieties surrounding the drug's use. While Pervitin was initially viewed as a tool that could enhance Germany's military capabilities and secure victory, its problematic side effects raised fundamental ethical questions about the acceptable limits of technological intervention in warfare. The growing evidence of Pervitin's negative consequences led to a gradual decline in its use throughout the war. The military high command increasingly recognized the drug's harmful effects on both physical and mental health. While Pervitin was never completely eradicated from the Wehrmacht, its widespread use diminished considerably. The shift in policy wasn't a dramatic, overnight reversal, but rather a gradual recognition of the escalating costs associated with its use. As the war progressed and Germany's fortunes began to turn, the military leadership's priorities shifted from maintaining a chemically enhanced army to other, more immediate concerns. The waning enthusiasm for Pervitin also coincided with a growing awareness of the drug's addictive nature and its potential to contribute to long-term health problems among soldiers. The initial illusions of a simple solution to the challenges of combat had shattered. The drug's addictive nature created a new set of problems. Soldiers addicted to Pervitin faced withdrawal symptoms when deprived of their supply. This led to decreased productivity and morale, while also increasing the risk of erratic behavior. The logistical difficulties associated with maintaining a steady supply to the front lines further compounded the issue. Moreover, the escalating costs associated with treating soldiers suffering from Pervitin addiction imposed a substantial burden on already strained military resources. The drug, initially seen as a cost-effective solution to logistical problems, was now placing an additional drain on the war effort. The experience with Pervitin during World War II serves as a cautionary tale, illuminating not only the dangers of uncontrolled drug use, but also the complexities of evaluating technological advancements within the context of warfare. The initial focus on performance enhancement obscured the drug's longer-term health consequences and ethical implications. The long-term impact of Pervitin on the soldiers who used it during the war remains a subject of ongoing study. The drug's harmful effects on physical and mental health have left a lasting legacy, while the ethical implications continue to spark debate. The story of Pervitin isn't just a historical footnote. It's a cautionary tale relevant to this day. The Nazi regime's reliance on a chemical shortcut underscores the devastating consequences of prioritizing short-term gains over long-term well-being. The story of Pervitin doesn't end with the conclusion of World War II. Its legacy extends far beyond the battlefield, reaching into the present day and continuing to shape our understanding of drug use, military strategy, and the ethical implications of technological advancements in warfare. The widespread use of the drug during the war left an indelible mark on German society, and its global repercussions are still being felt today. The post-war era saw a renewed focus on the devastating consequences of methamphetamine addiction among German veterans. Many soldiers returned home with severe physical and psychological impairments stemming from their prolonged exposure to Pervitin. The drug's addictive nature made rehabilitation a protracted and often unsuccessful process. The long-term effects of methamphetamine use weren't fully understood at the time, leading to insufficient medical care and inadequate support systems for affected veterans. Many struggled with chronic health problems, including cardiovascular disease, neurological disorders, and mental illnesses. Their experiences highlighted the insidious nature of methamphetamine addiction and the need for more effective treatment strategies. The ethical implications of the Nazi regime's use of Pervitin in warfare also sparked intense debate and scrutiny. The deliberate deployment of a potent stimulant to enhance soldiers' combat capabilities raised serious questions about the moral boundaries of military strategy and the acceptable levels of risk imposed upon soldiers. The widespread use of Pervitin during the war served as a stark reminder of the potential for manipulating human behavior through chemical means and its profound implications for warfare. The lack of oversight and the disregard for soldiers' well-being in the pursuit of military victory underscored the moral failings of the Nazi regime. The story of Pervitin also highlights the critical need for careful regulation and control of pharmaceutical products. The ease with which the drug was made available to soldiers during the war demonstrated the dangers of uncontrolled access to potentially addictive substances, particularly within a military context, where soldiers may be under considerable stress and duress. The post-war period brought about stricter regulations and increased oversight concerning the production, distribution, and use of methamphetamine. International agreements were reached to limit the production and trade of the drug, acknowledging its addictive and harmful nature. These efforts represent a crucial step in preventing similar tragedies in the future. The legacy of Pervitin also extends beyond Germany. The drug's impact on the Second World War and the ethical controversies surrounding its use have been widely studied by historians and scholars across the globe. This global recognition serves as a warning to future generations about the importance of considering the wider ethical implications of scientific and technological advances. The story of Pervitin also became a case study in the misuse of scientific knowledge for nefarious purposes. The drug's development and widespread use during the war demonstrate how seemingly benign scientific discoveries can be manipulated and exploited to achieve politically and militarily motivated goals, disregarding the potential harm to human life. This aspect of the story raises questions about the responsible conduct of scientific research, the importance of ethical oversight, and the need to carefully consider the potential consequences of technological innovations before their deployment. The Pervitin story illustrates the pitfalls of scientific advancement, divorced from ethical reflection. Beyond its historical significance, Pervitin also provides a lens through which to examine contemporary societal issues related to substance abuse and performance enhancement. The drug's widespread use in Nazi Germany is echoed today in the prevalence of stimulant drugs in various sectors of modern society. The pressure to achieve optimal performance, both in the workplace and in competitive fields, has led to an increase in the use of performance-enhancing drugs, mirroring the Nazi regime's attempt to create an ideal soldier through chemical means. These parallel situations highlight the persistent and pervasive nature of the human desire to enhance performance at the potential expense of health and well-being. The ongoing struggle with methamphetamine addiction underscores the lasting impact of Pervitin's legacy. The challenges faced by those struggling with addiction today are often exacerbated by a lack of access to comprehensive medical care and a societal stigma that prevents individuals from seeking help. The pervasiveness of methamphetamine addiction emphasizes the urgent need for comprehensive prevention programs and increased access to effective treatment options. The lessons from Pervitin's past must inform contemporary efforts to combat substance abuse and prevent further harm. The story serves as a stark reminder that the pursuit of enhanced performance must never come at the expense of human dignity and well-being. The narrative of Pervitin, therefore, is not simply a historical account of a drug used in wartime. It's a story with profound and lasting ethical, social, and medical implications, demanding reflection and ongoing dialogue about the responsible use of technology, the complexities of addiction, and the enduring challenge of balancing individual needs with societal objectives. The enduring legacy of Pervitin necessitates a continued examination of our past, present, and future. The story of Pervitin offers a unique lens through which to examine the broader context of drug use in 20th century Germany and its relationship to the rise of Nazism. The widespread availability and acceptance of various psychoactive substances in Weimar Germany created a fertile ground for the later adoption and normalization of Pervitin within the military. The permissive attitude toward drug use during the Weimar Republic, characterized by a blend of hedonism and social experimentation, contrasts sharply with the Nazi regime's later public stance against drug abuse. This hypocrisy underscores the inherent contradictions within Nazi ideology and its pragmatic approach to achieving its political goals. The Weimar era witnessed a flourishing of nightlife and a pursuit of pleasure, often involving the recreational use of drugs. This cultural landscape, characterized by a sense of disillusionment and social upheaval, paved the way for the subsequent manipulation of this predisposition toward mood-altering substances by the Nazi regime. The Nazis' skillful exploitation of existing social trends and vulnerabilities is reflected in their adoption of Pervitin as a tool to control and manipulate soldiers. The drug's ability to suppress emotions, enhance obedience, and eliminate fatigue resonated with the regime's overall goal of creating a disciplined and unquestioning army. This manipulation is further emphasized by the fact that while the Nazi regime publicly condemned drug use and promoted a facade of moral purity, they simultaneously facilitated the widespread use of Pervitin within the military. This duplicity reveals a deep-seated disregard for individual well-being and a cynical willingness to exploit human vulnerabilities in pursuit of political objectives. The Nazi regime's approach to Pervitin reflects a broader pattern of manipulation and control employed throughout its rule. Propaganda, censorship, and the suppression of dissenting voices were all used to maintain power and control over the population. Similarly, Pervitin served as a tool to manage soldiers' behavior and to ensure their unquestioning obedience. The use of Pervitin also raises questions about the interplay between science, technology, and political ideology. The Nazi regime's adoption of Pervitin is not an isolated incident, but rather an example of how scientific advancements can be twisted and exploited to serve the interests of a totalitarian regime. The story of Pervitin serves as a warning about the dangers of allowing political ideologies to dictate scientific practices and to shape the narrative around technological innovations. The lack of ethical oversight and critical examination that surrounded Pervitin's development and use during the war underscores the importance of maintaining a balance between technological advancement and societal well-being. Furthermore, the story of Pervitin in Nazi Germany sheds light on the complexities of understanding historical events and their causal relationships. It is tempting to attribute the Nazis' success and brutality to their ideology alone. However, the use of Pervitin reveals the extent to which technological and pharmacological elements all played a crucial role in shaping Nazi military capabilities and the behavior of their soldiers. This multifaceted perspective acknowledges the role of chemical substances and their influence in shaping human actions on a mass scale. This understanding moves beyond simplistic explanations and offers a richer and more complex narrative of how historical events unfold, involving the intertwining of political ideologies, social trends, and technological advancements. The study of Pervitin's role in the Second World War reminds us of the necessity to examine historical events through diverse lenses, avoiding simplistic narratives and embracing a more nuanced perspective that encompasses the complexity of social, political, and technological factors. The historical record often hides or downplays the extent to which technology and chemistry can impact human behavior. Analyzing the Pervitin story requires us to consider the interplay of factors that created a societal climate receptive to the use of a potent stimulant within a military context. It was not simply an issue of blind obedience or ideological fervor, but the confluence of several key elements, including pre-existing social norms surrounding drug use, the specific characteristics of the drug itself, and the calculated actions of the Nazi leadership. This complex interplay of factors makes the Pervitin story a compelling case study for understanding the relationship between technological advancements and their impact on human behavior, particularly within the context of warfare and political control. It necessitates a critical assessment of how technological innovation can be co-opted for both beneficial and destructive purposes, and the responsibilities of scientists, policymakers, and the wider society in ensuring that advancements are used ethically and responsibly. The story of Pervitin in Nazi Germany offers a lasting warning. The potential for manipulating human behavior through chemical substances should never be underestimated, especially in contexts where power and control are paramount. The lesson of Pervitin's legacy serves as a sobering reminder of the ethical responsibilities that come with scientific progress and technological advancement. The chilling tale of Pervitin extends beyond the specific historical context of Nazi Germany and World War II, offering valuable lessons for contemporary society. Its enduring legacy serves as a potent reminder of the potential dangers of unchecked technological advancements, the ethical dilemmas surrounding performance enhancement, and the complexities of addiction. The widespread use of Pervitin highlights a crucial aspect of human nature: the relentless pursuit of enhanced performance and the willingness to disregard potential risks in the quest for superior results. This inherent human drive, while often beneficial in fostering innovation and progress, can also lead to dangerous extremes when unchecked. In today's world, this drive is reflected in the widespread use of performance-enhancing drugs in various fields, from athletics to the workplace. The pressure to succeed, often driven by societal expectations and intense competition, pushes individuals to seek shortcuts and artificial advantages, mirroring the Nazi regime's pursuit of military superiority through chemical means. The ethical dilemmas surrounding performance enhancement are complex and multifaceted. While some argue that individuals have the right to augment their capabilities, others raise concerns about fairness, safety, and the potential for creating an uneven playing field. The use of performance-enhancing substances raises fundamental questions about what constitutes natural ability and the boundaries of human enhancement. The legacy of Pervitin also underscores the persistent challenge of addiction. The drug's highly addictive nature caused severe physical and psychological damage among German soldiers, a testament to the powerful hold that certain substances can exert over the human brain. Methamphetamine addiction continues to be a significant societal problem globally, emphasizing the need for ongoing research into effective prevention and treatment strategies. The parallels between the uncontrolled use of Pervitin in Nazi Germany and the contemporary misuse of performance-enhancing drugs are striking. Both instances reveal a willingness to prioritize short-term gains over long-term well-being, a disregard for the potential consequences of manipulating human biology and behavior. The lessons learned from the Pervitin story extend beyond the military context, having relevance in various aspects of contemporary life. The narrative serves as a cautionary tale regarding the potential for abuse in any context where there is pressure to enhance performance or achieve exceptional outcomes. The tale of Pervitin encourages critical self-reflection on the pressures faced in various aspects of modern life, including the workplace, education, and athletics. The pursuit of success and the desire to exceed expectations can often create an environment conducive to the misuse of performance-enhancing substances. The story necessitates a reevaluation of societal values and priorities. It demands a critical examination of the pressures that drive individuals to seek artificial enhancements and the societal structures that contribute to such pressures. Ultimately, the responsible use of technology and a focus on well-being are paramount. The prevalence of performance-enhancing drugs in the contemporary world underscores the need for ongoing public health initiatives to educate individuals about the potential risks and consequences of substance abuse. This education should address not only the physical and psychological harms associated with such substances, but also the ethical implications of seeking artificial advantages. Furthermore, there is a need to foster a more balanced approach to success and achievement. Instead of prioritizing solely performance and outcome, society should encourage a holistic perspective that values well-being, fairness, and ethical behavior. A focus on integrity and responsible conduct should be emphasized over the unchecked pursuit of enhanced performance. The story of Pervitin offers an opportunity to reflect on the need for greater ethical oversight and regulation in scientific research and technological development. The Nazi regime's disregard for the ethical implications of Pervitin's use serves as a potent reminder of the potential for scientific advancements to be used for nefarious purposes. There is a critical need for robust ethical frameworks to govern scientific research, particularly in areas that have the potential to manipulate human behavior or impact public health. The development and implementation of these ethical standards must involve interdisciplinary collaboration, engaging scientists, ethicists, policymakers, and members of the wider community. Moreover, the legacy of Pervitin calls for increased transparency and accountability in both the development and use of performance-enhancing drugs. This transparency must extend across various sectors, including athletics, the workplace, and the military. The story of Pervitin serves not merely as a historical account of a specific drug's use during wartime, but as a timeless parable illuminating the enduring and ever-evolving challenges faced by society in grappling with the complexities of technological advancements, performance enhancement, and addiction. The lessons from Pervitin's past must guide our actions in the present and shape our future. The story of Pervitin concludes not with a definitive answer, but with a series of lingering questions and a call for ongoing reflection. While the historical narrative provides a chilling account of the drug's use in Nazi Germany and its devastating consequences, its legacy extends far beyond the confines of World War II, resonating deeply with contemporary societal issues. The enduring relevance of Pervitin's story lies in its ability to illuminate the complex interplay between scientific advancements, political ideologies, and human behavior. The Nazi regime's exploitation of a readily available stimulant to enhance military performance serves as a cautionary tale about the potential for technological innovation to be misused for nefarious purposes. The pursuit of military superiority, often fueled by nationalistic fervor and a thirst for power, blinded the Nazi leadership to the ethical implications of Pervitin's widespread use. This myopic focus on short-term gains at the expense of soldiers' long-term well-being underscores the dangers of prioritizing political objectives above human dignity and ethical considerations. Pervitin's legacy also compels us to confront the persistent challenge of addiction and the societal pressures that contribute to substance abuse. The drug's highly addictive nature, combined with the intense physical and psychological stresses experienced by soldiers during wartime, created a perfect storm for widespread dependence. The pervasive nature of addiction, irrespective of historical context, highlights the need for comprehensive prevention programs and accessible, effective treatment options. The lessons learned from Pervitin's impact on German soldiers must inform contemporary efforts to address substance abuse, particularly among vulnerable populations. The story of Pervitin further emphasizes the critical need for rigorous ethical oversight in scientific research and technological development. The lack of ethical scrutiny surrounding the drug's use during World War II serves as a stark reminder of the potential for scientific advancements to be exploited for purposes that violate fundamental human rights and ethical principles. The development and implementation of robust ethical frameworks for scientific research must be a continuous process, involving collaboration among scientists, ethicists, policymakers, and members of the wider community. This collaborative approach is crucial to ensure that technological advancements are used responsibly and in a manner consistent with widely accepted ethical standards.